book weather speaks, his voice like a stream through valleys of sorrow, through Ella's dream. The candles burn low, the night stretches wide, a tale of a princess, a love she can't hide. Oh, Ella, her heart's in a cage, bound by a crown and her father's rage. She waits for the dawn, for the stars above. Will someone come? Will someone bring love? Her suitors brought gold, their banners held high, but love can't be bought, though many may try. The king in his pride, he turned them away. Ella still waits for her own chosen day. Through the book's worn pages, the story does flow. The book feather whispers what only he knows. Oh, Ella, her heart's in a cage, bound by a crown and her father's rage. She waits for the dawn, for the stars above. Will someone come? Will someone bring love? The moon hears her cries, the wind feels her tears, the forest stands a witness to all of her fears. The book feather pauses, the room holds its breath. Each word carries hope, each word fights her death. The book weather speaks, his voice like a stream through valleys of sorrow, through Ella's dream. The candles burn low, the night stretches wide, a tale of a princess, a love she can't hide. Oh, Ella, her heart's in a cage, bound by a crown and her father's rage. She waits for the dawn, for the stars above. Will someone come? Will someone bring love? Her suitors brought gold, their banners held high, but love can't be bought, though many may try. The king in his pride, he turned them away. Ella still waits for her own chosen day. Through the book's worn pages, the story does flow. The book feather whispers what only he knows. Oh, Ella, her heart's in a cage, bound by a crown and her father's rage. She waits for the dawn, for the stars above. Will someone come? Will someone bring love? The moon hears her cries, the wind feels her tears. The forest stands witness to all of her fears. The book feather pauses, the room holds its breath. Each word carries hope, each word fights her death.
He sat for another few minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Then discreetly checked his watch again. Time seemed to have slowed down. Giggity. All right.
Should have waited and called in again.
Ow! My head just came off.
Seems quiet. Too quiet.
It felt more like 25 minutes to have passed. Not 5!
I'm Batman. Gotham is never safe without me.
You ready? Does this hurt? Oh! Okay, the best
Some
part is...
reinforcement, please. Red thought he was fancy.
What time is it? It's 7 o'clock. Okay, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hunger gnawed at him. You can attach towers? Shut up. I've been trying to practice my glamoring. Look at me. Ooh.
Impromptu performance this evening, which I must say was indeed a welcome distraction.
And he decided that if she allowed him to use the bathroom to pee, then she probably wouldn't stop him from using the kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. You're very kind. This is gonna be funny. Good evening. The yawns have begun. You know, I may have been off work today, but it was still a busy day. To make matters worse, or better, I had this duh moment. Excuse me. I had this duh moment right before stream, like 20 minutes before. Because I had made these foldable tables. They're collapsible. It splits into two. You can use one table independently, which is great. But they're very heavy. And it just kind of clicked in my head. I was like, I am not doing this right. So that's when I realized I could actually do this a much simpler way. I just need to rethink the process a little bit. So we'll see if I deal with that after stream or not. I don't know. But anyway, good to see y'all. I've got the window open, but it's still hot in here. Or opens. It's cracked. Oh boy. Got my cup of tea. It's nice. Smooth. Has a nice blend taste of tea itself, the milk, and the little bit of sugar that I put in to sweeten it. Can't complain. Oh boy. All right. We don't have that much of the book left. We're starting chapter 22 this evening. 40 some pages, I think. 45. Gosh, okay. Let's get those out of my system. Gosh darn it. Cracker, hello. Here to check you from when you raided Curly. Oh, yes, that's right. Yes. How are you? How's Curly? Doing okay? Mad Locust. Merry Christmas from Denmark. 24th here. Today we open presents after dinner. Nice. Well, that's fantastic. Not a bedtime read then. I hope you have a fantastic time. Feels like it's bedtime for me. Yeah, Cracker, this, the atmosphere here on reading days is much more calm. That is my intent. Sometimes it depends on the book we read. It also depends on just how everyone in the chat wants to be. But typically, it's pretty chill. Gwen, hello. Starting a 5-day weekend, snacking on pizza, installing Linux because I don't like Windows anymore. Yeah. Windows 11 is a doozy. Wow. Oh, it is nighttime for you. Why did I... Oh, because it's 1 a.m., so technically today. Okay, I'm with you now. My mom's cat is sleeping next to me. Perfect. It's always chill when a cat chooses to sleep next to you. You've made it. You've been chosen. Apparently, I need more tea. Good grief. Come on. Cats for the win. Yeah. I was upstairs. I was upstairs a little while ago. And I was eating a bowl of cereal because I just wanted something quick, you know, dinner of champions. And my cat was very interested. I was sat with my back to the table because it was like it's a bench. Because everybody else was in front of me that way. But the cat was like sitting here and then over here. And he was just like... He wanted that bowl. I gave him at the end like 3 or 4 licks of a little bit of milk, and then that was it. You're done. You're cut off. But I might be his favorite now. So I'm okay with that. All right. Your puzzle. I am so sorry. Your puzzle for tonight. Where's my mouse? We've been doing castles since this is Destiny of a Broken Kingdom, and castles are certainly part of this story. But because we're finishing the book tonight, I figured we might as well do the inside of a castle. So you have a fireplace adorned with knights and whatever those people are on top. So there you go. But then again, I just realized it looks a little wonky because it looks like if you do the puzzle, you'll see 2 of these on the outsides of the fireplace where the pillars are. It looks like some sort of... I don't know, it almost reminds me of like a confetti gun that would just like poof, like a congratulatory thing, except bigger, which I just realized is a bit odd, but whatever. My mom had a cat. She swore up and down it hated all men. But the second day I was there visiting, I was the cat's new bed. That's when you can say, see? I am the man. The cat whisperer. All right. Also, as a reminder, for the month, it's going to be a long night. For the month of December, we are doing marble races, Grand Prix style. Whoever lands on the podium at the end gets their name added up here. Whoever has the most points at the end of the month wins a prize. Don't want to miss out. I've not met an animal yet that I didn't get along with. But that says something. It says something about who you are, I think. I really do. Whether it's a calming, non-threatening nature or some sort of... could even be a smell. I don't know, but there's obviously something that makes the animals trust. That's a good thing. That's a very good thing. All right. Get rid of that. Let's open up the races, because it is about that time. All you have to do is hit ! play when you hear this sound.
Perfectly splendid.
Once again, the sound is
Perfectly splendid.
perfectly splendid. I will not be joining the races because that would make it unfair. So count your lucky stars. All right.
Perfectly splendid.
You have 60 seconds to type ! play. Get your marbles on the track. Good luck. Appreciate you being here. It is time to read our book. I'm very excited to see how this all wraps up. Sad at the same time. Here we go. Oh, ! Kingdom, by the way, if you want to see more about what we're reading or see other books that Joe Saunders has written. We've read them, quite a few of them. I'm just gonna stick with the words that are typed. Okay. And if no one else joins Cracker, then Cracker's gonna get first place no matter what. Looks like, yep, you're gonna get first place. After another half day of riding, the port and castle of Saria stood out, radiant in the rays of the bright sun. The kingdom's capital, where Ayla's ancestors had chosen to build the castle, was a strategic point, making it the island's most prosperous trading port. They entered the courtyard a while later, and Ayla was comforted to see that during her year-long absence, nothing had changed. Who knows, I could get yeeted off the track. We've all tried. It hasn't worked yet. The thick stone walls continued to protect the castle's inhabitants. The old oak sat in the middle of the courtyard, giving shade to the rose bushes, and the well held its bucket, ready to be dropped into fresh water. Ayla brought her gaze back to Arden. His swaddling clothes were grubby, and they all needed sleep. Sybil dismounted and took the babe from his mother. Ayla too dismounted and entered the stables, her throat tightening as she breathed in the smell of fresh hay, bringing back memories of Frey. While Sybil did her best to keep good company, Ayla was all of a sudden overwhelmed with loneliness. "Is there someone to tend to our horses?" Ayla called. A young lad came running and stopped instantly. My Lady Ayla." He dropped his pitching fork and stared wide-eyed before making the sign of the cross. "Yes, Tony," Ayla replied, touched by the boy's reaction. "Could you please tend to Nova and the other horse?" She held out the reins and smiled. Of course, my lady." The stable boy gave a quick bow and grabbed his pitching fork. Then, taking the reins, he led the two horses to the far end of the building. With her son in her arms, Ayla stepped out of the building and walked across the courtyard, Sybil not far behind. "Oh my gosh, Cracker, you won. I can't believe it. How did you do it?" "Wow. You need to share your secrets."
Perfectly splendid.
At this rate, you'll be up on the leaderboard with everybody else. With every step, Ayla's pulse quickened. Tired and no doubt hungry, Arden began to whimper. A royal fanfare sounded, frightening the baby, Ayla turned to glimpse a grinning Tyan. Yes, a grinning Tyan standing next to a young page with a trumpet. The silhouette stepped out onto the balcony and scrutinized the courtyard. Father. Ayla's vision blurred when her gaze locked with her father's, taking longer strides, all the while calming Arden's crying. The princess hurried to the door, eager to throw herself into the king's arms. After a few agonizing minutes, the heavy wooden door on the ground floor eased open, and Saya rushed out. Ayla approached, trying to control the sobs that escaped from the back of her throat. The king's face had weathered further down the bright sunlight, or further from the bright sunlight. Squinting had accentuated the laughter lines at the corner of his cognac-colored eyes. Extra wrinkles had surfaced on either side of his mouth. Sayer shuffled back a few steps, gripping the sides of his head, his face blank with confusion. Every muscle on his face froze. He raised a hesitant hand and touched her head. I'm not dreaming, am I? He asked, wiping his wet cheeks on the back of his hand. No, Father, you're not dreaming. They said you died in childbirth. I arrived immediately after I received the terrible news, but you had already been buried. I can't believe you're here. Father, she mumbled and let her emotions take over. The king embraced his daughter and Arden in a tight hug, then clung to each other as if their embrace could rid them of their suffering. Regret surged with every breath Ayla took. I love you, Father, Ayla finally said. Over the king's shoulder, her nursemaid stepped out from the shadows, and Ayla held her breath. The woman had aged, but still remained proud. They stood, staring at each other. Then, like she'd done in Ayla's childhood, Athelide stretched out her arms. The king took Arden, and Ayla ran to bury her face in the nursemaid's chest, her sobs mingling with those of the older woman. Cracker, you've done it again. I just can't believe it. I'm not sure everybody is. They know their podium points are on the line. I almost hit join again.
Perfectly splendid.
Ayla cried for her life being a mess. She cried for making it back home safely. Most of all, she cried for being a princess when she could have been a simple damsel, enjoying life with a man she loved. I miss you, Athelide, Ayla mumbled. It's good to be back home. Now, no more tears, Ayla love. You always did that when I was a child. The older woman wiped Ayla's eyes with her handkerchief. You are here now, and there is no more need for weeping. Yes, no more tears, my dear. The king added, coming to join his daughter with a whining Arden in his arms. Ayla turned and held out a hand to her maid. Yeah, look at that. Do you remember Sybil? If it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't be here now. Sybil approached and bobbed a quick curtsy in front of the king. Thank you for the lurk, Gregor. Of course I remember your maid, the king replied. She's more than a maid, Father. She's my dearest friend. I do believe this little one is hungry, the nursemaid proclaimed. Let me take him to the kitchen and see if I can find someone to breastfeed him. Would you like to accompany me, Sybil? Ayla? Sybil questioned. Take Arden and see he is fed. My father deserves an explanation. Sayer wrapped his arm around his daughter's shoulders, then taking her time and walking in step with the king while they crossed the courtyard to the king's quarters, Ayla began to explain her past year in Lusania. And then there was a break in the story. Ayla woke the next morning to the sound of singing outside. She stretched her arms high above her head and frowned. She wasn't in Frey's hut. Ever so slowly, she sat up and turned to the space next to her on the bed. Arden slept peacefully, his angelic face turned to one side, mouth gaping. On retiring the night before, she'd refused to let him sleep in the crib her nursemaid had prepared. She needed her son close to her. Too many long weeks without him had deprived her of his presence. She caressed his small head and edged to the side of the bed before slipping her feet into a pair of satin slippers. Hands holding up her nightgown, Ayla tiptoed to the far end of the bedroom, eased open the balcony windows, and stepped outside into the warm morning air. Daylight unraveled its colors on the world, running over the sea, bringing everything to life. Ayla stood with her back resting on the outside wall, warm and grainy, so different from the cold, grey stones of Lusania. Outside the castle gates, seagulls stalked on the waterfront, preening their feathers while others glided over the incoming ship, their squawking carrying on the ocean breeze. The scent of brine blown in from the port filled her nose. She missed that. Below in the courtyard, busy grooms shouted to one another while the household servants went about their chores. Half a dozen men entered the gates, carrying crates of fish and seafood, making Ayla's mouth water. She hadn't tasted food from the sea for a year, and the sheer thought of swimming through the waves, collecting mussels from the underwater rocks made her feet itch. The glorious smell of fresh bread wafted upstairs, teasing her nose. She couldn't wait to go down for breakfast, to enjoy her father's company and sink her teeth into Cook's spongy patisseries. She turned back into the room to find Arden gurgling. Any minute now, his stomach would remind him that he was hungry, and no one would be able to calm his cries. Good morning, lovely, she called. Ready for breakfast? She combed her hair and quickly washed her face before dressing in a turquoise robe, her father's favorite. The one, he said, reminded him of her mother. The same shade of mermaid tails. Then, taking Arden, she headed down the stairs. Sybil, she called, entering the kitchen. Will you see that Arden is fed? Sybil took the babe from her mistress and gave him a quick kiss on the top of his head, while Ayla hurried to join Saya for breakfast. Good morning, father. Stunt mama's mama. Bonjour. Oh. I think you're the only one, so if you want to get a head start on points, now would be a good time. Just saying. The king turned. Come join me. Ayla sat opposite him at one end of the long table and waited for the servant to serve a plate of smoked fish with a bread roll. Okay, I know breakfast is good and all, but who has smoked fish for breakfast? Anyway, Sayer tucked into his food, eating with appetite while Ayla pushed the food around her plate with her fork. Are you not well, my dear? The king's voice showed concern. I'm fine, Papa. A little weary after the journey and events leading up to it. I can believe that after what you explained yesterday, and I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I thought I'd chosen the right man for you. His voice faded to a mumble. People from the Scandinavian countries? No, she managed to make it back home with Sybil and her baby. But what is going to happen next, I don't know. The prince that she married is dead, and so is the witch that cursed Frey. No, people who eat fish for breakfast. Oh. I thought you meant like who is she sitting with? I'm with you now. It's been a long day. People who eat fish for breakfast. Right. Yes, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Who knows? Okay. Now that we're on the same page, so to speak, hopefully I'll be able to keep up. Sorrow and regret stood out on the king's face, and Aelia pitied him. This man of high principle, who believed that marrying her to Ovander would bring their two kingdoms together, had failed in his judgment. But I'm here now, thanks to Frey, who found me in the forest and cared for me. Ayla had spoken highly about the man. The conversation with the king had stretched long into the night. She praised Frey's kindness and affection, but hadn't mentioned his looks. She would keep that for later, once she decided what she wanted to do. We need to talk, the king said. His voice had grown serious. I know this is not the right moment to bring up the subject, but we have to decide on your future now you are a widow. But I know it's so soon after the death of your husband, but I'm not getting any younger, and the incident of your death aged me quicker than I would have hoped. Ayla reached across the table and placed a hand on Sayer's arm. Please don't say that, Papa. We need to find you another husband, a person to protect you when I am no longer of this world. But I have our army to protect me. The king tutted. You need to have more children. What if something happens to Arden? Who will rule the kingdom? That's the faraway future, Ayla replied, crushing her bread roll between her fingers. Oh my gosh, Stunt Mama's mama, how did you beat everybody? I don't even know. Shooketh.
Perfectly splendid.
Amazed. Such skill you have shown on the track. I'm more worried about now, but you could be right about little Arden. The king stopped chewing and stared at his daughter's worried face. King Lucan is going to come looking for him. King Lucan is going to come looking for him, she added. What makes you think he suspects the child to be in Saria? The royal family believes you to be dead. Unless someone saw me leave? But you are dead, my dear. If anything, they would go to Cavalon to search for this Bodis person you mentioned. From what I gathered yesterday, he stabbed Ovander with his dagger. That is proof enough for them to search there. Ayla chewed on her bottom lip. What if someone saw Sybil with the babe? The royal family is no fool. especially the Queen. She knows the only place Sybil will go is Saria, to the child's kin. If that is the case, we will be ready for them. We need to be, Papa, because this unfortunate situation will create conflict between our two kingdoms, especially as Lucania no longer has hold over Saria due to Arvanda's death. The king stared at his daughter. So, we have to be ready, because Queen Thalia is a very ambitious person who is set on ruling Saria. Nothing will stop her from getting what she wants. Look how she tried to get rid of me. Again, I thought that was the king speaking, not her. Whoops. Ayla pushed aside the breadcrumbs and took a small spoonful of soup, while Sayer chewed his bread roll, a deep frown set on his forehead. A quiet knock at the door, and Sybil entered with Othlide. "I'd like to take Arden out for some fresh air," her maid said. "Is that all right with you?" "Of course," Ayla replied. "Let Othlide show you where she used to take me when I was a child. But before, let me give my little darling a hug." Ayla took her son and smothered him with kisses, enjoying his soft skin and baby smell. She could spend all day cuddling him, but that had to wait. Her father's face had softened on seeing his grandson, but Ayla knew they still had things to discuss. Sybil and the nursemaid left the dining room, chatting about what they could do to amuse the baby. The king watched them leave, then turned to Ayla. "Is he? You know." "No, Papa, he isn't." A little regret etched on the old man's face. "I may be the last of the mermaids, unless that is passed down through the female line." Sayer acknowledged. "There's something you need to know, my dear. Something of the utmost importance. Should King Lucan invade Saria, and if we do not wish for war, we have to act." Ayla had already been confronted with battle and its overpowering smell of blood, a smell that 9 times out of 10 meant death or mutilation. In her youth, men from the neighboring kingdom of Darien had invaded Saria, pillaging the borderline villages. But Sayer had responded, refusing to let a few rebels disrupt the peace. Blood had been shed, but Saria had triumphed, leading her father to demand punishment for the surviving rogues. The Prince of Darien had complied. "What do you have in mind?" Ayla asked, slipping out of her morbid memories. "Neither you nor I wish for war." The king leaned forward, palms flat on the table. "You are the only person who can stop that, because of your mermaid side, and what your mother told me." Ooh, family secrets. You know, if you don't take first place, I'm just going to be blown away. 2 in a row, I know. Ayla placed a hand on one of the kings. "Talk to me about her, father." Sayer let out a profound sigh. "It's true we never spoke about your mother, but you were only just born when she passed away. And I suppose the opportunity never arose. Maybe now's the time to reveal the secret." Uh-oh. Beeve's here. He may interrupt your plans. Hello, Beeve. The king headed to the tall wooden dresser and retrieved a leather drawstring pouch from one of the drawers. He returned to the table, untied the cord, and took out the conch shell. Hello, Phoenix. Oh, Papa, it's beautiful. Beautiful and precious. Ayla fondled the shell's smooth surface and raised it to her ear. Yet dangerous, the king added. Ayla gasped and immediately pulled the shell away from her ear. The sound of waves on shingle faded. The shell can change the face of the earth, or rather, change the face of the island, her father corrected. How so? I only know what your mother told me, Sayer began. The rest you must discover for yourself. A quest. We have a quest. The king took the shell from his daughter and traced a finger around its smooth edges. The legend goes back a very long time, when the island was still attached to the mainland. Due to a terrible earthquake, the island, as we know it today, broke away from the mainland and started to float. Out to sea, Ayla added, remembering what she'd overheard in her childhood. Not only floating out to sea, but gradually floating up into the sky. Ayla gasped. But the Mare Kingdom had a powerful wizard who, by magic, created 8 giant dragon statues from the underwater rocks. 2 dragons for each kingdom. Each dragon with heavy chains locked around their ankles to stop the island from floating away further. Well, well. Star Mama's mama still holding on to the lead there. But will it be disrupted?
Perfectly splendid.
We're about to find out. Ayla had seen the chains in the sea, but had never given them much thought. Now, talking with her father, she understood their purpose. The Merfolk lived first on the island, Sayer continued. But over the centuries, humans from the mainland arrived, pushing them to remain in the sea. But why? Ayla asked, crushing a piece of bread. Apparently, they were considered as deceitful creatures, leading men to their deaths when on ships. Surely that's not true. Ayla's eyes flashed as she made her point. Sayer shrugged and took a sip of his wine. Wine at this time of the morning? When one is afraid for whatever reason, one invents stories to suit themselves. And you know all this from Mother? Sayer nodded. From the history handed down from generation to generation. Ayla shook her head in disbelief. How could people be so stupid? You haven't met people, obviously. Because of unjustified fear, her underwater family had been deprived of what had been originally theirs. How did they become extinct? Ayla asked, trying to control her mounting anger. Sayer caressed the conch shell and sighed. A colony of great jellyfish became uncontrollable, stinging and killing the merfolk, a bit like wolves attacking men on Earth. But Mother survived? The king nodded. With a few other men, she managed to flee the massacre. But their bad luck didn't end there. According to your mother, the mermen had become sterile over time. Their species had diminished and would eventually become extinct. Oh boy, Star Mama's mama is holding on strong. strong, I tell you. Race number 8, though, starts right now.
Perfectly splendid.
Ayla slumped back in her chair. How did that come about? I've no idea. Maybe something in the water? Ayla murmured for herself. Your mother, being the king's daughter, came to see me one day and begged me to marry her. Sayer stared down at the table, a simple playing on his face. She was a beautiful woman, strong-minded and determined, and it didn't take long for me to succumb to her charm and accept her proposal. Ayla popped a few breadcrumbs into her mouth and chewed pensively. Your mother wanted to continue her species. By accepting this union, the merfolk would continue to exist, and in return, our kingdom would benefit from the precious gems on the seabed. And you have these gems? The king nodded. But I've never seen them. Wait, but I've never seen them. That was her. You have, my love. They were on the crown you wore on your wedding day. The king wiped away a stray tear. But since your mother's death, I've lost all interest in the seabed gems. Ayla placed a comforting hand on her father's arm. You are the only surviving mermaid, Ayla. The only person who can reach the ocean bed and save our kingdom should war break out, which is something neither of us desire. Sayer took another sip of his drink. So, how can we stop war? Ayla asked, wondering where all this was going. And what can you tell me about the dragons? She'd only ventured to the bottom of the ocean a few times and had never come across these sea dragons. Another swim further along the seabed would be in order next time. From what your mother told me, these dragons are the guardians of peace. Sayer placed the conch shell beside him on the table. I remember your mother once saying they are the solution to stop war. How, Papa? With the conch, he replied, nodding at the giant shell. How? I've no idea, my love. Ayla clenched her fists and slammed them on the table. No one has any idea about anything. Calm yourself, Ayla. The king's firm voice echoed in the large breakfast room. How can I? You gave me a mission to save the kingdom, yet I have no idea how to go about it. How do I communicate with the dragons? Will they understand me? Are they even alive? She squeezed her head into her hands. Why is it whenever I ask a question, there is never an answer? Phoenix had an answer. It was to win. But can you win enough? That is the question. Mr. Marcher, Mr. Night Marcher, sir, how are you? It's good to see you. I hope you're well. I know it is not easy, my child, and I am so sorry to be of no real help. I only know what your mother told me, and that doesn't seem enough, does it? Oh, Papa. Ayla breathed, coming to sit at his feet. What if I fail? Sayer brought his shaky hand onto his daughter's head and smoothed back her hair. the same gesture he'd done when she'd been a child. I have great faith in you. Ayla raised her head. More faith than I have in myself. Stop that. Where is my determined daughter? The one who used to fall off her pony and climb back on time and time again. A chuckle escaped Ayla's lips. There's more at stake than tumbling off a pony. Believe in yourself, child. You have your mother's spirit, and I am here to help you. And that's the end of chapter 22. So, after all this time, we find out about this conch shell that has immense power. There's dragons at the bottom of their island, stopping it from floating away. Makes you wonder if she and Ovander had been hunky-dory for the rest of their lives. Would she have ever known? I don't know. Better watch out, Night Marcher. Phoenix has a knife. And you're next in line. All right. Chapter 23 of our wonderful story. Definitely didn't see the dragons coming. No, me either. Plot twist. Page 165 is where the next chapter begins. I do appreciate you guys being here. I know it's Christmas Eve. There may be still many things to do. But you are here. And I appreciate that. Here we go. Like what? I don't know. You tell me. Could be wrapping something. You could be decorating something. You could be making more pie. Ayla sat on the beach, observing the ebb and flow of the tide. Arden was with Sybil and her nursemaid. The older woman doted on the babe, which brought a smile to Ayla's face. Glad to be back in Seria with her father and son, she should be bathing in happiness. But she'd become restless. Each day brought more frustration and the same routine. She ate, she swam, she played with Arden, she slept. And she'd done that for a week. I just need to mop the floor before tomorrow. Food prep for tomorrow all done. Fantastic. Are the stunts coming to your house then? Is that the plan? Gliding her hand over the warm sand, she let the grains slide through her fingers. A wonderful feeling, one she could enjoy all day. Again and again she swept a semicircle until her fingers hit a small stone. Pulling it up, she rubbed away the damp grit, and tears emerged. Yes, we do Christmas here on Christmas Eve Day. Awesome. Look at you winning again. It's almost like you're going to get first place or something. Race number 10.
Perfectly splendid.
I will say there is one race that has no competitors in it. So therefore, it's almost like 15 races. Kind of looking that way. It certainly is. But you never know. A beautiful gem, the exact color of Frey's eyes. Emotions welled up, clogging her throat. To make her life complete, she needed Frey. She tried to reason with her clashing thoughts, stay in the comfort of Saria with people who loved her, or return to seek out Frey and persuade him to come away. He'd refused the last time, but she couldn't get him out of her mind. She needed to feel loved like only he could. He had to leave with her, and she wouldn't take no for an answer. She threw back her hair and faced the late afternoon sun. Visions of Frey's sensitive hands flashed in her mind, pulling her closer to him. His unmistakable scent, his warm lips. There was more to Frey than the monster he made himself out to be. Ever since he'd found out on that foggy night, he'd been attentive and watchful. Laying aside his strange condition, Ava was surprisingly attracted to him. She couldn't call him handsome with his hairy goat face and animal legs, but there was something in his look.
I'm proud of you, you know that. I hope you do.
Well, thanks, buddy. Hi, Renato. His warm violet eyes murmured something tender, promised something more. She swallowed at the sudden dryness in her throat. Returning to Lusania would be sheer madness. In doing so, she would be throwing herself into the arms of the enemy. From behind, Nova nudged her nose against Ayla's shoulders. Ready for a run in the water? She asked, rubbing the horse's nose. I know I am. You demand? No, you demand. I'm not the man you demand. She raised a foot into the stirrup and heaved herself onto the saddle. Sitting comfortably, Ayla patted Nova's neck and urged the horse forward with her legs. Nova eagerly approached the waves, gradually picking up speed to gallop along the water's edge. The perfume of salty water flooded the air each time spray flew up in the horse's hooves. Ayla's legs tingled as the sea spray hit them, bringing on the need to swim. She guided Nova back to the shore and tied her to their favorite tree, the biggest one on the beach, offering ample shade. My goodness, Mom's mama. Okay, you have to share a little bit. Aunt Amlas is here, sneaking in. Hello, Amlas. Didn't see you join the race. Sneaky, sneaky. All right. Race 11.
Perfectly splendid.
Good luck. Staring out over the ocean, Ayla recalled Sayer's words. Could she really be the only person to save their kingdom from war by stirring up the undersea world? Time to find out. No. The end. That's a strange ending. Just kidding. With a quick look around the creek, she slipped off her trousers and knotted them around Nova's saddle, allowing her shirt to cover the top of her legs. Then, unfastening one of the saddlebags, she took out the conch shell. I won't be long, she said, stroking the mare's neck. The dry sand scorched her feet as she ran towards the sea. Not for long. On approaching the water, the wet ground soothed her burning soles, and she let out a sigh. Under the hot June sun, Ayla observed the calm sea shining 1,000 twinkling lights under a shiny gray head, and 2 intelligent eyes broke the surface. You've come. Oh no. Ads are about to start. And who's come? Is it like the ocean talking to her? We're gonna find out after the break. And no reading until it's over. but I will take a sip of my tea. So good. So, I started making this new slotted table, and I am very close to being at the point where I can assemble it. I've got all the pieces cut, they've been planed, they've been sanded, they've been stained, and I just finished applying a clear coat, which I need to go and sand off very gently to give it a nice smooth finish. But after that's done, the last thing I need to do is get the dowels that I need and see if my concept comes to life. That will be the tricky part. I say tricky because this bench design is so simplistic in its nature. It's like... it's a slotted bench that doesn't have any pieces in between holding it together. So you have one part that is the leg and the wood that you sit on going across it. And then normally you would have another piece as a divider. And then you would copy the front leg and it would be a leg and then a piece. Divider, leg, piece. But there is no divider. The dowels are there to help hold it together, but there's nothing in between each piece. And that, if it works, will be, I think, really cool once it's done. But it has to work. Do you have a drawing of it? No. But I will be taking some pictures as I attempt to work on the assembly of it. So I'll be able to show those off once the time comes. Speaking of time, the ads are done. For now. And Amlas, you're a winner. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. All right, race number 12.
Perfectly splendid.
Good luck. All right, so someone in the ocean, or something in the ocean, said, "You've come." Let's find out who that was. Clear droplets of water cascaded down the dolphin's body as it flew into the air. And now we have a prop. The dolphin. For those of you that don't know, this is Flop. Flop, say hi. Okay. See if I can balance Flop while I read. Thank you for the lurk, Purple. In the tranquil turquoise water, Ayla reached out and caressed the dolphin's smooth, rubbery skin. She grabbed its dorsal fin with her free hand and swam with it, creating momentum and speed. After a while, she released her hold and propelled down to the seabed using the chains for guidance. Oh, we let go of the dolphin. I was getting a challenge to hold anyway. But good job, Flop. Anchored into the sides of the underwater rock and covered with mussels and other shellfish, the rust-covered chain swayed slowly in the tide's motion. The roaring of the waves gradually subsided until her ears were filled with deep water noises. From the shore, people imagined the ocean to be a peaceful world. So wrong. The sea was an orchestra of sounds, from the snapping of shrimps to the songs of the faraway whales. Thanks to the sensitive eyesight of the sea people, Ayla had no problem making her way around. She swam deeper and deeper, enjoying the rush of colder water over her skin. After a few more minutes, she reached the seabed and the dragon. She'd heard talk about them, rumors of what they looked like, of how they dwarfed men. She never imagined them to be this big. Saria's castle would only come up to their waist. That is a big-ass dragon, and there's 8 of them. The dragon's feet were anchored in the sand, solid and strong, circled with the last links of the rusty chain. The beast's horned head and neck stood out like tarnished brass. Amlas, nicely done. Chipping away at Stunt Mama's lead.
Perfectly splendid.
You're on fire? Woo! Don't put me out. I'm on fire. That was so embarrassing. Right. The statue had been there long enough for its scales to turn to stone. Its wings, also covered in stony scales, rested folded on its back, making it hard to believe this so-called dragon had once moved. Ayla drifted around the huge monster, wondering how she could communicate. With its eyes closed, she didn't know if it was dead or asleep. She reached out and touched the top of its head. No reaction. She rubbed a hand gently on the hard scales of its neck. Still no reaction. With shaky hands, Ayla raised the conch to her mouth and blew gently. The shell's sweet sound filled the ocean with positive notes. Ever so slowly, the dragon's huge head turned towards the young princess, its eyes alive with fire. It met her gaze, opening its mouth wide, showing serrated teeth and a long, narrow tongue. In spite of the icy cold water, the beast's orange gleam sent heat burning through Ayla's veins. A deafening sound, like a rusty drawbridge being lowered, echoed in the water when the dragon released its wings from its body. Ayla gasped, astonished by both the beast's size and grace. When raised and stretched to its full, its wingspan reminded her of the mountains separating Saria from Darien. Tall, ancient, and foreboding. The dragon folded down its stone wings and stared at the young princess with its piercing eyes. Ayla swallowed hard, wondering how to speak with the imposing beast. Would it even understand her? I understand you. A strange tingling ran through Ayla's body. She heard the dragon speak in her mind. Oh, sorry, Amlas, Stepmama's mama said. That's my victory. I'm gonna take it back. Thank you. But
Perfectly splendid.
you get 3 more chances. A strange, yes. Telepathy? She asked. The dragon nodded its huge head. Ayla's pulse rate quickened. At least she could ask questions. She loosened her grip on the conch shell. Its edges had dug into her palms where she'd clutched it tight. We need to stop a war with Lucania. My father believes you can help. The dragon dipped its head once again. How? Ayla asked. We don't want people to die. Dragons from Lucania will pull it away. How far? Far enough for no war. Forever? Ayla wanted to know. Until they are told to bring the kingdom back. Ayla chewed on her bottom lip. At least she had some answers. Releasing Lucania and leaving it someplace in the ocean wasn't permanent. Thank you, she said, and the dragon closed its eyes. What do? Send like a note tied around a rock and throw it in the water and be like, hey, it's time. Ayla's heartbeat raced as she swam back to the shore. She'd spoken with the dragon, convinced they would avoid war, even if it meant exiling Lucania from the island. Emerging from the sea, she found her father waiting next to Nova. She dragged herself out of the water and waited for her tail to return to legs. I found the dragon, she shouted, slowly standing, and I talked with it. The king approached and held out her clothes. It was frightening, Papa, but so exciting. I knew you would succeed. You do me proud, Ayla. Ayla slipped on her breeches and wrung the water from her hair. Let's ride back, the king suggested. Cook will be waiting to serve dinner, and we need to speak. Ayla shook her hands free of water and mounted Nova. The king's face gave nothing away, but whenever Sayers said they had to speak, something serious was at stake. And then, a break in the story. Which means tea. Also, I just realized something. And this was kind of my fault, so I take the responsibility of this. We only do marble races on days where I'm reading. And tonight we are going to finish this book. But I had said, oh, we'll do marble races until the end of the month. Because in my head, we were still going to be reading. But we don't have anything else to read. So, I'm not sure what to do. Still mama's mama. I don't know if we need to just... if I need to just keep putting up races.
Perfectly splendid.
And see what happens. Or... I don't know. Can you read us your book? Well, I could, but the main kind of point in stopping after this book was so that I could give the reading part a necessary break, if you will. Let it chance to be... give it chance to be missed, so that when I feel the urge to get back into it, you know, I know it's been missed, and then we can rejuvenate with something fresh. But, yeah. didn't really think about the fact that there wouldn't be any marble races, because I typically don't do them unless we're reading, because I can actually keep an eye on it. So I'm going to have to give that some thought. I may have to run races while doing something else and just interrupt the other thing to keep the races going. I'm not sure. Anyway, the break in the story is over. Fubar. Hello. Good to see you. Break in the story is over. We shall keep going. Ayla followed her father down the steps to the beach for their evening walk. They had enjoyed a pleasant meal together. The king hadn't said much, explained they would speak during their promenade. Despite being eager to know what her father had to say, Ayla hadn't pushed the matter further. Lit up with dozens of candles, the pathway to the beach glinted in the last rays of sunlight like magic lights. Soon, stars would spread across the sky, twinkling in the velvet black. Beautiful, isn't it? The king said, gazing at the horizon to admire the red-streaked sky. Yes, and I missed it so much. Ayla rested her head on Sayer's upper arm and raised her gaze to the heavens. What is it you want to talk about, Papa? Is it Amlas winning the second-to-last race? No, child, it is not. All right.
Perfectly splendid.
This is the last race. Race number 16. Last chance for points. The king caressed his daughter's head and cleared his throat. I don't want to push you, my dear, but have you thought about what we discussed concerning your widowhood? Ayla pulled back. This was the second time her father had brought up the subject in a few days. She had to tell him about Frey. I have thought about it. In fact, I think about it a lot. The king closed his eyes and held a hand over his chest. I'll draw up a list of potential suitors. Papa... But I'll let you have a say. Papa, she repeated, pulling on his sleeve. I know we don't want to rush things, but... Papa! Sayer jumped. It's my turn to talk to you, Ayla said, clenching her fists and trying to sound calmer. The king stared into his daughter's sparkling eyes. Go on, my dear. Ayla wrapped both arms around her body, deciding how to go about speaking of Frey. Frey means much more to me than simply a person who cared for me in the forest. I gathered that, my dear. I love him, Papa. Heat flooded her face. How would he react knowing Frey was not of noble blood? The king took a deep breath. Are you sure you aren't confusing love with kindness? No, Papa. Sayer held her gaze, a reaction on his face that she couldn't quite grasp. Frey's dear to me, she continued, hoping to convince the king. More than you can imagine. It's true he is not of royal blood, but look what royalty did to me in Lucania. You hardly know the man. I know more about him than I did my late husband, she said, chin held high. There was no love with Ovander. King's eyes narrowed. I hope he didn't dishonor you. No, Papa. He didn't. He couldn't. Don't tell me the man is married. It's more complicated than that. Ayla caught the look of puzzlement on her father's face. How could she explain Frey's situation in a positive way? Best get straight to the point and say what she meant directly. No point in trying to dodge around the issue. He's different to others. He's like me. Who killed her husband? Well, she found out that Bodis, the hunter, the most loyal person to the royal family, is actually the uncle to the goat man, Frey. And when it was time for them to depart, it was his dagger that entered Ovander's chest, and he fell out of the window just as the witch did, and was dead. But the witch was on fire, so yay for that. Oh, cool. I know, right? Okay. We'll find out who's on the podium here soon. He's a merman? No, Father. He's... how can I say? He's half beast. From the hips down. The king took a step back, an incredulous stare on his face. How? The witch in the castle cast a spell on him. Ayla's words finished in a mumble. Sayer rubbed a hand across his chin. And what future do you hope with a man who is half animal? Would we have to hide him? Ayla couldn't believe her father was reacting like this. Are you worried about your dignity, Father? He can't have children, Ayla. I have Arden. One child is not enough. The king's voice was harsh. And where will you live? Here in the royal palace? Have you even asked him? Yes, I have. But he refused. Sensible man. Papa! Sayer lay a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. I'm sorry, my dear. I can't have this. And it appears Frey is sensible enough to understand that too. It's for the best. Ayla opened her mouth to riposte. Sayer held up a hand. Do not get me wrong, child. It is not his status that bothers me. I can give him a title whenever I want. It's the fact that the kingdom needs more heirs, and Frey cannot give you that. Sayer looked at his daughter for a couple of seconds, a determined look in his eye. The look Ayla knew would take a lot of persuasion to change. She watched her father climb the steps to the castle and fade into the shadows. The sun had set over the mountains and twilight was creeping in. She moved to her favorite rock and draped her legs over the side. The water lapped at the sides of the large stone. Now and again, the young princess dipped her toes into the cool sea, enjoying the warm tingle rippling from her feet. Head pulled back, Ayla observed the slow arrival of the stars. She had to stay positive and focus on what she'd promised herself, to be reunited with Frey, and nothing her father would say or do would stop her. It was simply a question of time. And that concludes chapter 23. Normally we wait... Normally we would wait until we're done reading to find out who our winners are, but I don't want to. Professor Petty with the book bonk. I'm gonna have to remove that soon, or at least hide it for a while. Ow. Because there won't be a book to bonk my head with. Alright. In third place, Amlas. Well done. You can have one off to the side. Wow, thank you. Appreciate that. You're so thoughtful. In second, we have Phoenix, which only means that I am in first. Just kidding. Stunt Mama's mama. Well done to the three of you. I'm sure you're all just absolutely shocked. Just shocked, I tell you. Allow me to update the scores. All right, so we're going to add you there. Phoenix, you now get a ×2. Well done. And Amlas, you also get a ×2. All right. Updated. It's official. It's on the board. I come up with all the solutions. What would I do without you? How lost I would feel. Let's do some random races, because I want to join in. I wish I could just push some magical button and it would follow, but instead I have to pick a number. All right. 50-some seconds. Just delicious. All right, how are we doing on time? We're good there. Chapter, oh dear. I just realized, and Joe Saunders, when you're listening to this, chapter 24 has an unfortunate additional letter in the title. It now reads chapter 24. There's an I in there. Figured you would want to know. That way, it just reads chapter. Okay. Who are we going to follow? Stunt Mama's Mama. All right. Let's see. Page 173. A rider centered the courtyard, vapor rising from his horse's nostrils. The stallion pulled to a halt and stamped a foot on the ground. Ayla looked up from her morning work of tending to the herbs and watched the hooded man dismount. Something in his proud stance seemed familiar. She stood and rubbed the earth from her hands. With a quick flick of the wrist, the rider pulled back his hood, and Ayla gasped. "Dear Lord," she murmured and rushed to the man. "Bodis!" she called, a tremor of emotion in her voice. That was a weird sound in my ear. The hunter turned and Ayla rushed into his open arms. A few stable boys stopped their chores to stare at their princess in a stranger's arms. Ayla couldn't care less. They could stare all they wanted. Oh dear. Well, oh boy. Just Amlas. Good luck. How is he? Ayla whispered into the hunter's ear. Frey, you mean? Ayla pulled back from his embrace and thumped him gently on the shoulder. And who is this fine man? Ayla heard her father say as he came to stand beside her. This is Bodis. He was a horse breeder from Cavalon. Well, none of us finished that race, so that's a great start. Oh, that one's fun. The hunter butted in, taking a low bow. Are you not the young man who accompanied my daughter and her maid to Seria? The king asked, clasping the hunter's hand. That I am, but not so much a young man. Bodis laughed. Anyone who is not my age is a young man. The king replied, shaking the hunter's hand. Now, let my household provide you with refreshment. It's a long journey from Cavalon. That would be greatly appreciated, your Highness. I have ridden hard, and I also bring disturbing news. Ayla's face blanched. Did he mean Frey? Probably not. Oh, it's just the two of us, I see. Okay. Come, then, urged the king. Let us enter my office directly. We can take refreshments there. As Ayla and Bodis walked behind the king into the castle, she couldn't help the knot tightening in her stomach. What just happened? Is he well? She asked. Bodis nodded and quickened his step to follow the king, leaving the young woman perplexed. Something was terribly wrong. News had to be bad for Bodis to have come all this way, and only after a fortnight. Oh, God. This is not going well. We are winning. Maybe there's a track out there that doesn't yeet people from it. Perhaps it's this one. Not sure. Doesn't look dangerous at all. Ayla lifted her skirts and caught up with the two men. Sayer entered his private office, calling for refreshments before sitting at his rectangular desk. He bade Bodis be seated to his left. Ayla took her usual place opposite her father. No sooner were they seated than a young page came to pour mead into the goblets of crystal. Ayla took a long sip of the cool beverage, her eyes never leaving their visitor. Absolutely beautiful, Bodis exclaimed, holding up and examining his glass. Crystal, I believe. We are not short of sand in Seria, mixed with wood ash, then melted into liquid and blown into shape. We have highly skilled craftsmen in the kingdom. Bodis finished his mead in one go and licked his lips. I must thank you for looking after my daughter and for bringing her safely to Seria, the king said. I only did what any person would have done. The princess needed to be protected and escorted to her kingdom. He turned to Ayla and gave her a slight nod of the head. You risked your life, and I am grateful to you, Sayer added. More mead was served before the monarch dismissed the pages with a raise of a hand. So, what brings you to Seria? The king asked, turning his full attention to the hunter. And what of this disturbing news? Ayla set her glass on the table and sat back, tapping her fingers on the arm of her chair, waiting for the hunter to speak. Bodis cleared his throat and pulled on the collar of his shirt. Lucania is out for revenge. They came to Cavalon. When I returned after bringing Princess Ayla to Seria, I found my homestead ransacked. A few of Lucan's men had come searching for me, They may have heard from Ayla that my dagger had been my downfall. Yes, my daughter explained. Of course, they searched in vain. Being a hunter, I know how to survive in the forest. He stopped to take a long sip of his drink. On arriving back, I found my sister seriously ill, and a few days later, she succumbed to an infected cut on her leg. Ayla gasped. Poor Frey, his mother dead, and the poor man knew nothing of it. The king made the sign of the cross and urged Bodis to continue. Oh, Amlas, well done. We buried my sister with all the sacraments necessary, and I looked for the mouse. There it is. Sacraments necessary, and spent a few days mourning, but I couldn't stay. Lucan's men would return, and I wanted no harm to come to the people. My niece, Elis, has no family apart from me, and I cannot remain in Cavalon. Would you accept for us to take one of your ships to the mainland? Of course, my good man, the king butted in. It is the least I can do to reward you for your noble deeds. What about Frey? Ayla dared ask. A flush swept across the hunter's face. I have no news of him. Ayla's eyes widened for a short moment. She lowered them to mask her surprise. The man was lying. Let's watch a phoenix. And where is your niece? The king asked. Down by the docks, waiting in a room I rented for the night. What the? All these weird noises. I rented for the night. I shall not hear of it, Sayer said, placing his goblet on the table. Until one of my ships sails, you shall both stay in the castle. The hunter's eyes filled with an inner glow, and Ayla was grateful for her father's generosity. Thank you, sire. Bodis brought a hand across his chest. With your permission, I shall head back to the docks and fetch my niece. I'll accompany you, Ayla said, locking her eyes with those of the visitor. I need a walk. A bit of exercise will do me good. The hunter gave a curt nod of the head. And then, there was a break in the story. What are all these noises I keep hearing? Rather perplexing. And how did the three of us get yeeted? Good luck to you, Stunt Mama's mama. Not sure where it is your marble is trying to go, but may it get there. Wow, you just dodged all of that. Straight in. Shall we turn the camera? What is that? You know, I'm going to stop asking questions. All right. Okay. Ayla followed Bodis down the stone steps leading to the docks. She hadn't had the opportunity to speak with him about Frey's whereabouts. It appeared he didn't want to talk about his nephew. After taking his leave, he'd hurried away, leaving her to trot after him. Well done. You're the only one that finished. Oh, this one again? Good luck, everyone. Yikes. Bodis, she called, running quickly down the steps to the docks. I need to know about Frey. Later, he shouted over his shoulder. I need to fetch Elis first. The hunter dashed into a building, leaving Ayla waiting outside. A little annoyed, the young woman closed her eyes and filled her lungs with the salty air, calming her frustration. The cry of an oyster seller forced Ayla's eyes open. The woman stood behind a stand, holding out her wares, adding to the cacophony of other merchants selling textiles and spices to the crowd. Ayla walked a short distance along the dock, dodging the passerby until she reached the pier, where a young couple stood hand in hand looking out to the sea. The man said something, and the dark-haired woman rested her head on his shoulder. When the man kissed the top of the woman's head, a pang of envy flit through Ayla's chest. Frey used to kiss the top of her head. What she'd give to change places with the woman, be able to love the man of her choice and be loved in return. If she ever managed to find Frey, maybe that would be the case. The young man bent his head, and the woman spoke in his ear while her hands slid around his waist. Ayla's smile widened at their signs of affection until the man turned. Frey? His name slipped from her lips, a small sound halfway between a gasp and a whimper. No one could mistake those violet eyes. She stumbled backwards, taking refuge behind a tall pile of sacks freshly delivered from a ship. Shock swirled like a poison deep inside, making her breathing sharp and shallow. She didn't know what surprised her the most. Frey in Saria, Frey in his human form, or his familiarity with the young woman. By some miracle, he'd regained his normal appearance. He'd sent her away, saying that he could be no future for them. At least, not in his goat form. The curse had obviously been broken, but why hadn't he searched for her? I do find it a bit odd that... Oh, wow. Hello. If this really is Frey, like, the odds of just finding him randomly, unless he came with... No. Because they didn't have a boat. He came on a horse. Bodis did. I said that on Sunday. Thought the curse would be lifted after the death of the witch. Yeah, I could see that absolutely being a thing. But I am a bit confused. We gotta keep reading. Lost in her thoughts, Ayla only returned to the present when a strong hand touched her arm. She turned and gazed up into velvet eyes. A long, slow smile lit up Frey's face. I hoped I'd see you again, he whispered, gliding his knuckles across her cheeks. Tears blurred her vision when her gaze dropped from his face to his feet, then back up again to rest on his eyes. Is it just me? Very good. A long, slow smile lit up Frey's face. Gosh, I already read that part. Tears blurred her vision when her gaze dropped from his face to his feet, then back to his vision. Okay. Those beautiful eyes that so often haunted her dreams. But look at you. But look at you, she blurted. Frey opened his arms to her. Ayla hesitated. Don't you want? His voice faded to a whisper. I do, but... Ayla left her sentence unfinished and tilted her head to the young woman who'd approached to stand beside him. You must be Ayla, the woman said, I recognize you from what Frey told me. Ayla struggled to speak. He's spoken a lot of you, the woman continued. A flush spread across Frey's cheeks as he dug his elbow into the young woman's ribs, bringing on a fit of laughter. Are you going to introduce me? The young woman asked between giggles. Angelic. Good evening. Frey cleared his throat. This is Elis, my sister. The knot in Ayla's stomach loosened a little. When did you, return to your normal self? She stammered. Frey gazed down at his legs. The day after you left Saria. I was watching the castle from my favorite spot when flames shot out of the tower. I hurried to get a better view when the witch fell to her death, and I started to change. Why didn't you come with us? I was in agony, Ayla. Curled up on the ground while pain shot through me like fire, blinding me. Far worse than when the witch turned me into the goat. Ayla choked down a sob. It had become so painful, my love, that I passed out. There you are, Bodis called from behind Ayla's shoulder. Been searching for you two. His voice died to a whisper. You knew about this, didn't you, Bodis? Ayla asked, wiping her eyes. You knew Frey was here. The hunter's hands twitched around his belt. Didn't you, Bodis? Ayla's voice rang out. And you kept it to yourself. Why? I asked him to. Frey replied, placing his sister's hand into the crook of the hunter's arm. Take Elis for a walk, will you, Uncle? I need to speak with Ayla. Bodis patted his niece's hand, and they turned toward the pier. Care to explain? She asked once Bodis was out of ear reach. Hands pushed deep in his trouser pockets, Frey gazed out to the sea. It's taken me all this time to arrange things to leave Cavalon. I won't be going back there for a while. Maybe never, he said after a long moment of silence. Bodis went to speak with your father about transport on one of your ships. Ayla reached out and clasped his arm. You could stay in Saria. Frey shook his head. And see you in years to come with another man? That would kill me. You know my feelings, Frey. Nothing has changed. I honestly thought we had something special. We did. We do. Then why? Frey hesitated. Fear. Ayla stiffened. Fear of what? Maybe fear of you rejecting me, he said, turning to face her. You're among your people. It would be normal that you eventually wed someone noble from your kingdom. Have some faith in me. Frey let out a long sigh. I'm no fool, Ayla. Saria needs more heirs, and don't tell me that marrying again never crossed the king's mind. Ayla swallowed her next remark. How right he was. I'm here to take a ship for the mainland, he continued. I can't stay in Lusania or Cavalon. Ayla placed a finger on his lips. I never stopped thinking of you. I even spoke to my father about us. What did the king say? Ayla avoided his gaze. I thought so. Royalty doesn't mix with commoners. We had something special in the forest. I'll never forget that. But we have to be realistic. Ayla cut him off by placing her mouth over his. She didn't want them to argue. After a few seconds' hesitation, Frey took her in his arms and returned the kiss, releasing a low groan from the back of the young woman's throat. God, it felt good to have his warm mouth on hers again. She pulled back and smiled up at him. It has nothing to do with your status. I told my father about your appearance, but now there's no reason we can't be together. Bodis returned with Ellis, a pained look on his face. King is giving us hospitality until the ship sails for the mainland, he stated. Exactly, Ayla confirmed. Let's return to the castle. Ayla led the way along the docks and up the steps, racking her brains, wondering how everything would turn out. She'd found Frey, and no way would she lose him again. And no question of him sailing for the mainland. They reached the castle and crossed the courtyard. Ayla let Bodis and Ellis enter first, while she tagged behind with Frey. Sayer's face lit up on seeing the hunter with his niece. He called a young page and handed out instructions. Ask Othlai to prepare 2 rooms for our guests, in the south wing. Now hurry. Wait, Papa. Ayla stepped out from behind Bodis, clasping Frey's hand in a tight hold. Make that 3 rooms. And then, another break in the story. We are merely 18 pages from the end, folks. Gosh darn it. I'm going to run ads again since we're at a break, because there's only a few minutes before they're going to happen anyway. Might as well get them out of the way. So we'll keep reading after the break. After the break. See what I did there? The break. Because it's a break. Anyway, moving on. Oh. Perhaps we should just keep reading from here. Yes. I think that would be quite lovely. And in the meantime, I can remove this from my screen. And then move this over here. Yes, it's all coming together. Lovely. I hope everyone's having a lovely evening so far. If you're not ready for Christmas yet, you might be screwed. Yep, excellent. I am looking forward to Christmas Day. It is fun to see everyone open their gifts and see their smiles on their faces, or perhaps looks of confusion from time to time. But also because we get to go see Fire and Ash at the theaters. The latest Avatar. I also learned that apparently there's going to be 2 more Avatars after this one. I think. 1 for sure. I think 5 in total. I'm pretty sure 5 in total. Which feels like a lot. I mean, I know the franchise has done well for itself. There's a video game, there's the movies, there's who knows what else that I'm not aware of. But my goodness. My goodness. All right. Ads are done. And whoever I was lurking before is now rated somebody I don't know, so I'm going to change that real quick. We'll just put up Night Marcher's stream, and we'll put up
I'm pretty loyal.
Fubar's stream as well, because I know he's lurking right now. Leave a lurk. All right. Here we go. Page 180. That evening, the king invited the 3 visitors to his table. The meal began in complete silence, much to Ayla's disappointment. The page served a succulent dish of sea trout. Everyone ate. No one said a word. Normal for guests. The king had to start the conversation, and Ayla was under the impression he was making them stew. Eyes cast down, Ellis sat by Bodis, picking on small pieces of the fish. Now and again, the hunter patted her hand in a gesture of reassurance. Frey sat next to Ayla, his thigh grazing hers, making her face flush. Sayer sat at the head of the table, tucking greedily into his food. Delicious. The king finally broke the awkward silence, but when he said no more, Ayla decided she had to act. Sayer made everyone uncomfortable, and she refused to have that. She'd never seen him react like this. She was about to make a comment when the king turned to Ellis. Is it not to your liking? You've hardly touched your food. The young woman turned deep crimson. It's wonderful, very tasty. Maybe everyone is waiting to hear what you have planned for them, Ayla said, pressing her knee against Frey's thigh. It is no surprise we are all anxious. Sayer took a long sip of his wine and wiped his lips on his serviette. My daughter has spoken with me since your arrival at the castle a few hours ago. Frey's leg twitched against Ayla's thigh. Bodis, my good man, the king said, turning to the hunter. Are you truly decided on sailing to the mainland? I have no other choice, Your Highness. What if I suggested you take residence in Selria? The hunter's eyes widened. And sour your relationship with Lucania? Sayer huffed. Because you believe we can still have a good relationship after they tried to kill my daughter, my own flesh and blood. I'm a traitor, sire. Not to me, my good man. You saved my daughter and grandson. Bodis rubbed a hand over his chin. So, what is it to be? Sayer asked. I don't know what to say. It would be an honor. But I cannot let Frey sail to an unknown land alone. We'll come to your nephew later, the king said, flicking his hand in the air. I wish to make you my chief horse breeder, Sayer continued. You will have a house not far from the castle with enough land to perhaps take a wife and start a family. Bodis brought a hand over his chest. That is an honor, sire. And you, my dear, Sayer said, gazing at Ellis. How would you like to live in the castle and help Sybil and Athelide with my grandson? Lips apart, Aelys gaped at the king. That would be perfect, Your Highness. Aelys smiled. Her father had thought a lot about their situations. She wondered what he had in store for Frey. Gripping her serviette with hot hands, she breathed slowly, waiting for the verdict. Now, young man. Frey moved uneasily in his seat. My daughter cannot praise you enough, and I am truly grateful for all you did. She is enamored with you. But I must admit that I was reluctant to the situation due to the way she described you. I can understand that, Frey hurried to say, but it appears you have regained your normal appearance. By some miracle of the Lord. Ayla risked a gaze in Bodis's direction to find the hunter grinning. I need more time to think of your situation. Please understand that. I do, sire. In the meantime, you will of course remain my guest. The king took another sip from his goblet. At the moment, I'm more concerned with the possibility of Lucania invading this kingdom. Bodis fidgeted on his seat. 'Tis no more a possibility, sire. Sayer turned to the hunter. What do you mean? I have news from Cavalon. A person from my village, who I trust with my life, found me while I was down at the docks just now. And? Lucania's beginning to gather an army. They are coming for the child. Ayla was on her feet in a flash. How do they know Arden is here? Spies. The king spat out, cracking his knuckles. Ayla screwed her napkin in her hands. But our army isn't half as big as Lucania's. We can't fight, Papa. It's true, we do not have much of an army compared to our brilliant navy, the king added, but our ships won't save us. He rubbed his fingers across his chin, which leaves us with only one other solution, my dear, and you know what that is. That solution was a break in the story. I think it's time to get the dragons back involved. I feel like the story is going to have one of those nice, happy, everyone's doing well endings. Ayla and Frey are going to be together. Bodis got his job back in a new kingdom. Niece gets to take care of the kid. One big happy family. All right, break's over. Clad in a loose nightdress, Ayla stepped out of her bedroom. After a quick look up and down the corridor, she placed her bare feet gently on the cool flagstones and crept to Frey's room. Woohoo! Sneaky, sneaky. She was sure Athelide had chosen to lodge the man in the furthest room away from hers. Gentle snoring came from her father's room as she stopped for a few seconds outside his door. She smiled and continued to the end of the corridor until she reached Frey's room. Without knocking, she opened the door to find the room empty. A candle burned on its intricate metal holder, and the sheets on the four-poster bed had been pulled back, suggesting Frey couldn't be far. A noise from the balcony, and Frey appeared in the room, bare-chested. Ayla? Heat spread throughout the young woman's body as she watched him in the glow of the candle. his clean-shaven face so different in the dim light. "I've come to be with you." She rushed into his arms, savoring his warmth, and a groan sounded in Frey's chest. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, and Ayla let out a delightful laugh. "I remember you asking that a few weeks back when I first kissed you. I was sure then, and I'm even surer now." She released his hold and wrapped her hands around his neck, tangling her fingers in his hair. "I've missed you," he said, gazing down into her yearnful face. "Not as much as I, and I want to be with you tonight." Frey shook his head, but Ayla cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "Listen to me, Frey. We may go to war and die. I want you to love me. Now, you listen to me," Frey said, placing his hands over hers. "I'm sure the king has a plan to resolve conflict. He won't allow his kingdom to be taken and his subjects to perish." "He does have a plan," Ayla replied, her voice breaking. "I am that plan, because that plan needs the ocean and my mermaid side, but I may not succeed." Frey covered her lips with his fingers. "Your father wouldn't ask you to be part of his plans if he didn't have faith in you. You will succeed." Ayla removed her hands from his face and let out a frustrated sigh. "I will hold you this night," Frey whispered, "but no more. It wouldn't be proper." What a guy. Got a woman basically begging him to take her, and he's like, "No, or it is not proper. But I will hold you." "I've wanted this moment for so long, Frey." "As I have too," he butted in, "but 'twould not be honorable of me to take advantage of you." "I'm the one who came into your room," she went on to say. Bemused, he rubbed a finger over the frown lines that had formed between her eyes. "And I will accompany you to yours before dawn. No one will know. Now come." Ayla's pulse kicked up a notch when Frey led her to the bed. She lay facing him, her body relaxed, her heart thumping. Love and respect glinted in Frey's eyes, and despite the warm night, a shudder ran through her. Ayla's senses spun when Frey gently kissed the hollow of her throat, murmuring her name. Then, they had kissed and shared the same bed back at the hut, but this was different. From the open window, the night breeze played with thin curtains, waving them back into the room. Frey turned onto his back, and Ayla rested her cheek over his heart, watching the moonlight peeping into the room. "I'm glad we're together again," she whispered into the small hairs of his chest. And the hairs said, "Me too." "And I'm not going to lose you again." A chuckle sounded in Frey's throat. "Sleep, my love." He's like, "Girl, go to sleep. Tired." All right. Play. It's a puzzle. We do exclamation point puzzle. Chapter 25, everybody. Here we go. To avoid the invasion of his kingdom, Sayer decided to meet Lucan's army on neutral territory. It had taken the king 2 whole days to prepare his small army. Weapons had to be cleaned, armor checked, and extra arrows manufactured for the archers. Not to mention a healthy supply of provisions to feed everyone should war be declared. Excuse me. Metal clashed as Sayer's army entered the region of Freeland after 7 hours of riding. They had set out from the palace before dawn to avoid traveling in the hot sun. The men were tired, but understood what was at stake. A light smell of sweat and fear filtered in the air. No one wanted a battle, yet no one wanted to give in to submission. The king raised a hand and complete silence filled the air. Ayla sat on Nova a few feet behind her father, Bodis and Frey to her left. Sayer caressed his stallion's arched neck with soothing strokes while his army took place on either side of him. Horses stamped and snorted. Ayla wondered if they could sense an imminent battle. Legends had it that horses' hooves would crash like the waves in a storm before battle. The line of Sayer's horseback soldiers stretched across Sayer's border with Freeland, their armor gleaming in the sun, waiting for the enemy to move, swords not yet drawn. On the other side of the passageway separating the 2 kingdoms, Lucania's army confronted them, both kingdoms waiting for the signal to attack, their respective banners flapping in the sea breeze. A racing shadow at the crest of the tallest hill caught Ayla's attention. "Bodis," she said in a low voice. "Up there." Nova snorted and tossed her head. Ayla patted the horse's head with a reassuring hand. The hunter gazed in the direction of Darien Hills and frowned. They've been there for a while, he replied. "I've noticed them too," Frey said, no doubt curious to see what's going on. "You're right, lad. It's not every day 2 neighboring kingdoms confront each other." Ayla rubbed her clammy hands on her thighs, smoothing down her trousers, taking in small breaths to calm her unsteady heart. The scorching sun was growing hotter by the minute, or could it be fear that made her hot? A horse approached, mud flying from its hooves. Ayla's eyes narrowed, focusing on the rider wearing the colors of Lucania, waving a white flag high over his head. The animal trotted to a halt a short distance from Sayer's front line. "His Highness, King Lucan, wishes to speak with you on the subject of his grandson," the rider shouted. Ayla's mouth ran dry. "There is nothing to discuss," Sayer shouted back, trying to steady his horse. "We know the child is here." Sayer turned in his saddle to catch his daughter's eyes before gazing back at the rider. "My grandson remains in Seria. Return to your king and deliver my message." The rider was about to turn his mount when Lucan appeared. "Orvander is dead," Lucan shouted. "Thalia is devastated. It is only normal for her grandson to stay with her." "The child needs to stay with his mother," Sayer shouted back. Lucan raised his hand. "I couldn't agree more. The child's mother is dead, and as the babe was born in Lucania, the child is returned to Lucania. I made a promise to my wife to bring the babe back." Ayla kicked Nova's sides and joined her father. "His mother is alive," she shouted. Lucan's eyes widened. "Ayla." Her name fell from his mouth in a strangled gasp. "Yes, Ayla. Alive and well, no thanks to you and your wife. The queen, who made everyone believe I died in childbirth." Lucan's expression changed from stupor to anger within a few seconds. He sat straighter in his saddle, chin high, shoulders back. "You can have another child," he shouted back. "This child is the only hope for our royal lineage to continue. That traitor Bodis put an end to any more royal descendants. Besides, the babe is Ovander's son and heir to my kingdom." At the sound of his name, the hunter kicked his horse forward and settled on the other side of the king. "I will surrender to him, Your Highness. It is unjust that war will be declared because of me." "You are not the sole cause of Lucan's revenge." "Traitor!" Lucas spat, jerking his head back. "I trusted you, Bodis, and you betrayed me. You killed my flesh and blood." Bodis refrained from replying, but his fists gripped his reins tighter. "Justice must be done. I want that traitor," Lucan shouted, pointing to the hunter. "And I want my grandson." "I will not give up the child." "Then you leave me with no choice," Lucan butted in. "You have until noon to come to your senses. After that, I will take the child and the traitor by force." Lucan pulled on his stallion's reins and galloped back to his army, the flag-bearer close behind. Ayla turned to the king and caught a muscle twitch in his jaw. "Is it time, Papa?" The king nodded and pulled the conch shell from one of his saddlebags. "Do what you must, my dear," he said and handed it to her. Ayla peered down at the object, then at the king's confident face, praying the dragons will do what they claimed they could. "You can do this, child." The king squeezed her arm and leaned across his horse to place a loving kiss on her cheek. Ayla turned Nova around and urged the horse forward. On reaching Frey, she pulled gently on the horse's reins and stopped beside them. "I have my mission to fulfill," she said, holding up the shell. "If I succeed, we can avoid battle." Frey reached out and curled a stray hair around Ayla's ear. "Be careful, my love." Ayla kicked into Nova's sides and forced the horse into a gallop. Ahead, the track widened into a fork. Ayla veered to the right, leading downhill to the beach. Vegetation gradually grew sparse until only green tufts of grass stood out from the sun-warmed sand. Ayla scanned the environment, searching for somewhere to tie Nova. Only a piece of driftwood paled by the sand lay to one side of the beach. Not enough shade for her horse. Ayla turned and headed back to one of the trees. In a flash, she dismounted, tied the reins around the trunk, then slipping off her trousers, she grabbed the shell and ran to the water. Jumping over the waves, her legs gradually drew scales and little by little turned into a tail. Pressed for time, Ayla swam with all her might. Without her dolphin friend, she had to rely on her own strength. Some time later, the sea became darker and eroded chains materialized. She swam downwards, using the large links for guidance. She'd seen the dragon in Caria and prayed there would be another here in Lucania. Then she saw it. One of Lucania's sleeping dragons. As she'd done in Caria, she raised the shell to her mouth and blew gently. Once again, the shell's sweet melody filled the ocean. The dragon opened its eyes and spat out fire. Ayla didn't flinch, accustomed with the waking of the sea beast. "I need your help," she said by telepathy. "I know." "Then you know why we need to stop war?" The beast nodded. The dragon in Caria said you can pull Lucania away." Again, the beast nodded. "How long will it take?" Ayla asked. "Time. We have slept for many centuries." "Can you do that now?" "Just go." The dragon raised its leg, giving a little leeway for the chains. Heavy links clanked, straining and rattling while the chains swayed. With its head held back, the beast opened its mouth wide and let out a deafening, gargled screech. Ayla had never heard anything so loud, so terrifying. The dragon snapped its mouth shut, and Ayla caught a faraway clunking, pushing its way through the water. "What's that?" she asked. "Other Lucanian dragon answering." "He knows?" The beast turned to her. "I tell him he is ready." Ground burbled up from the ocean floor, swirling in spirals as a dragon's foot lifted, moving sand and small rocks and causing a sudden landslide. The water around her rose, and Ayla imagined the size of the waves on the sea's surface. Time to return to her father. She closed her eyes and bowed to the dragon, blowing into the conch shell once more, hoping the dragon would take this as a gesture for a sign of gratitude. "Thank you." The beast opened its wings, rose from its hind legs, and treaded forward, its eyes lighting the way. One slow drag after the other, the dragon's feet pushed through the sand, and Ayla was plunged once more in the dark of the seabed. And then there was a break in the story. Probably because, it takes time. Can you imagine Ayla be like, war starts at noon. Do you think you could move before then? It's like, 9. Rolling onto the wet sand, Ayla waited patiently for her tail to change back into legs. Laying the shell on the sand, she peeled off her shift, wrung out the seawater, and slipped it on again. Then, getting to her feet, she picked up the conch and rushed up the sand dune to Nova. Distant thunder growled, but no clouds dotted the sky. This had to be the dragon's doing. Well, the dragon is like, "How easy have you ever tried pulling an island, princess? And there's only 2 of us, I haven't stretched in hundreds of years. Give me a second." The first tremors were so faint that she barely noticed them. But when the ground began to shake, Ayla knew she had to get back to the army. She pushed the shell into her saddlebag, pulled on her trousers, then untied Nova and galloped back up the track. Sayer's army came into view. commotion ringing out amongst the soldiers. "Papa!" Ayla shouted, slowing Nova down to a trot. Frey turned at the same time as the king, and Ayla saw him place his palm over his heart. She held his loving gaze, and he gave her a quick nod of the head. Muscles tensed, pulse racing, Ayla brought Nova to a stand next to the king's stallion. "It's done, Papa," she said, patting Nova's neck. A horse snorted, then another, until a large part of the army's horses were neighing, unable to keep in place. Dust rose as the ground shook beneath them, stronger this time, sending some of the animals rearing. Frey nudged his horse forward to stand at Ayla's side. The princess held out a hand, and Frey clasped it in a strong hold. I don't know why the word clasped is sometimes so difficult to say. Clasp. Anyway. The thunder of breaking rock brought everyone's attention to the ground in front of Lucania's kingdom. A large crack had formed in the ground, rapidly widening, separating Lucania from Freeland. Ayla stared, mouth agape, when little by little, Lucania pulled away from them. She prayed the dragons knew when to stop. She couldn't bear to think that Lucania would disappear forever. Silence filled the air as the soldiers gazed at Lucania drifting away. No one spoke, no birds sang, no more rumbling. Even the wind had ceased. When Lucania was but a dot on the horizon, Ayla let out a silent prayer. The dragon's hall had come to a halt. She dragged her gaze away from the receding kingdom and stared to her left. The ocean was pulling back unnaturally, as if it were taking a deep breath, gathering strength for the oncoming assault. "There! Over there!" a soldier shouted, pointing out to sea. The distant horizon swelled upward, a dark line growing taller with every passing moment until a giant wave towered over the ocean, cold and powerful. It rose higher and higher, building its height while it sailed inland. "Frey," Ayla called. "This is called a tsunami." Standing high on her stirrups, she pulled a leg over Nova's body and leapt onto Frey's horse to sit in front of him. Right now, she needed to be held. If everyone perished, drowned in the water, she would be the only one to survive. The tall cliff left by the tearing away of Lucania acted like a buffer against the giant wall of water crashing against it. The wave ended its journey in a sliver of water, drifting gently over the horse's hooves. How did that work out? When the water retreated, the only noise that broke the silence was the occasional cry of a seagull. Ayla pressed the back of her head against Frey's chest. They'd avoided war, even if it meant banning Lucania from the island. The land around them smelt like the beach, salty and full of iodine. The passageway leading from Freeland to what had been Lucania now loomed over the sea. That ends chapter 25, which means, ladies and gentlemen, one more chapter. 5-6 pages, and it's all over. I'm a bit perplexed in the physics of the wave. I was thinking that it was so big that it would have caused a massive crash of water that would have surely hit them, but doesn't sound like it. It sounds like they got their toes wet. I think because they were on a city, they were okay. Jeez, I can't read. They were on a cliff. Yeah, but they could see the wave, which tells me it was taller. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Chapter 26 matters. Starts on page 193. Here we go. Let's see how the story ends. Oh, actually, I need to send a quick message. Okay. Where was I? Right there. All right, here we go. Chapter 26. Let us return, Sayre called, tugging on the reins of his horse. We are done here. Frey wrapped his arms tighter around the princess, and Ayla reveled in his warmth. It's over, he whispered in her ear. Ayla turned to face him. Yes, it's over, she repeated. A stray tear trickled down her cheek along with relief. Maybe now she could live a peaceful life with the man she loved. Frey brushed the tear away with his thumb. What is it? Happiness? Relief? Fright? Longing? She mumbled, locking her eyes with his. Frey pressed his lips against her forehead, and another tear rolled down her face. Her emotions were getting the better of her, draining her even. You've been through a lot, Frey said, caressing her wet hair. But you triumphed. It's normal to relax and release tension. Ayla cupped the side of his face and placed a kiss on the corner of his lips. Boy, Sayre called to a young rider. The boy in question nudged his horse forward. Your Majesty? Make haste and return to the palace. Tell my housekeeper that war has been avoided, and we are on our way back. Tell her also to prepare a feast for tonight. We are to celebrate. Yes, sire. Ayla watched the rider turn and gallop away. If the boy keeps up good speed and doesn't tire his horse, she said to Frey, he'll be back at the palace by mid-afternoon, whereas we won't be back until this evening. At least we're returning in one piece, and with a victory. Wise words again. Ayla laughed and dismounted. She jumped onto Nova and guided her horse towards the king. You are right to prepare a banquet, father. They deserve it, she said, pointing at the army. You deserve it, my love. You saved us bloodshed, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Ayla fiddled with her horse's reins. What happens now? Sayre sat up straight in his saddle and looked out to sea. I have the whole journey to decide. Will 7 hours be enough? I'll let you know when we arrive. Come, I'm sure everyone is eager to get back. You couldn't speak truer words, Papa. I need to hold my son. And another break in the story. Probably because Well, it's a long ride back. Laughter bounced off the stone walls of the banqueting hall. Everyone happy that war had been avoided. Glasses clinked as people toasted the king's victory, and the hum of conversation blended with the tunes playing by the musicians standing in a corner of the large room. Ayla observed the lavish layout her father had provided to celebrate. War had been avoided. Arden remained in Syria, and hopefully her father would accept her union with Frey. Every face gleamed with laughter. Even Bodis, who rarely smiled, was in a deep conversation with his niece. The joy of the feast was spreading from guest to guest. Nothing had been spared, from the succulent fish and seafood to the king's best wines. Their housekeeper had done an excellent job of organizing everything in such a short time. Sat on his throne at the head of the table, Sayre turned to the hunter on his left. Bodis, my good man. Sire, I have a question that has been tormenting me since we left Freeland, and I hope you can enlighten me. If I can. Will Lusania not cause problems? I mean, will they not seek revenge? Bodis paused before replying. They have wood from the forest to make ships, sire. A deep wrinkle appeared on Sayre's brow. But they have no experience in manufacturing of sea vessels. Bodis continued. And they have no ports. Lusania is surrounded by cliffs, hence the reason for their alliance with Syria. So you do not believe they will attempt to invade us again? If they do, it will take a long time. A very long time. Mayhap we will not be here to see it, sire. The king let out a long sigh before calling for silence. The time has come to decide on your future, my dear. The king winked at his daughter. Time to find you a husband and fill the palace with children. Ayla blushed and reached for Frey's hand under the table. Frey, Your Highness, I haven't rewarded you for rescuing and looking after my daughter when she was abandoned in the forest of Lusania. Frey entwined his fingers with Ayla's and squeezed gently. My daughter has suffered because of her duty to Syria by marrying the man I chose. She has been through a lot, young man, and now deserves happiness. Sorrow and regret seeped through the king's words, moistening Ayla's eyes. Her father had believed he'd done the best. How could he have known that Lusania's royal family had in store for her? Ayla has asked me to grant you her hand, and I have thought a long while about this. Sayre took a sip of wine. I have decided to let her choose her husband. I would hate to make the same mistake a second time. Frey showed his gratitude with a curt nod of the head. I have also decided that by marrying my daughter, you will gain the title of... I wish for no title, sire. The king raised his brow. Taking large, deep breaths, Frey gazed at Ayla's before turning to the king. The princess knows I am not much of a talker, sire, but I love her deeply. Marrying Ayla and making her happy is enough. Should we be granted the joy of having children, then bestow them with titles. Well spoken, young man. I understand what my daughter sees in you, and I also see that we have a common interest, making her happy. Sayre raised his glass for all to see. The wedding will be set for the coming summer, after a respective grieving period of a year. I understand, sire, Frey replied. 'Tis only normal. Loud cheering filled the room. Friends embraced, pages continued to serve food, and more glasses were filled as young and old joined in with the merriment. Ayla wasn't as enthusiastic as others. A year was a long time to wait to become Frey's wife, but there was nothing she could do, nothing apart from sneaking into his room at night. Olvander had only been buried for 3 weeks. It seemed like a lifetime. Despite what he'd put her through, she wasn't heartless to the point of not respecting the traditional mourning period. Frey brought her hand to his mouth and placed a gentle kiss over her knuckles. It will be worth waiting, my love. Ayla huffed. Have no fear. We won't be waiting a year to prove our love. And then there was another break in the story. Perhaps because she was proving her love. Serious. Under the shade of her favorite tree, Ayla sat on the beach the next morning, hugging Arden. The 2-month-old baby sucked on his feet and cooed gently. Not far, Frey stood with a foot raised on a rock, both hands perched on his knee, gazing out at the island of Lucania. She gets pregnant before the wedding. Ooh. Father would not be pleased. Or maybe he would. I don't know. He did ask for a lot of children running around the castle. Tears prickled Ayla's eyes. He used to do that in the forest, stand with one foot on a tree stump and stare at the castle of Lucania. That had seemed an eternity ago. It had only been a little over a month. A warm breeze blew across her face, blowing back stray hair. With closed eyes, Ayla reveled in the sun's rays. Frey approached and gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. Shall we return to the castle? Ayla opened her eyes and handed Arden to her future husband before getting to her feet. With an arm around Frey's waist, they crossed the sand and to the steps leading up to the castle. A seagull squawked, and Ayla turned to catch a flash of silver in the sky. The sun had caught the bird flying along the coastline. Its flapping wings were like the pages of a book, turning rapidly. How she wished the coming year would pass that quickly. Taking Arden from Frey, she gazed at Lucania on the horizon. People had become used to the kingdom in the distance, as if it had always been there. That is your kingdom, my love, Ayla said to her son through blurred vision. Kingdom you may never rule. A kingdom that has brought nothing but deceit and pain. Frey placed a long kiss on her forehead. You did your duty, Ayla, love. He grazed a finger along the baby's cheek. We avoided bloodshed both for Saria and for Lucania. You gave both kingdoms a chance to live in peace. And Arden will always have this kingdom to rule. Frey was right. Arden would one day rule Syria, hopefully surrounded by other siblings in an untroubled nation. Yet, in her mind, peace was more than avoiding battle. It was learning to live with others, making concessions, being tolerant, loving one another. She rubbed her nose against Arden's neck and mumbled a promise in his ear. We'll help you make this kingdom a happy place. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, Destiny of a Broken Kingdom by Joe Saunders.